It is fall in 3 days. Did you realize that? Or not fall, sorry. It's October in 4 days.
Oh my goodness. It's already fall, but I
It is
can't believe it's
fall.
October in 3 days. That's
It is fall. I remember
crazy.
growing up when we were in Hong Kong and we would always watch these like YouTube videos of like Bethany Moda and stuff like that. And they're like, fall, pumpkin spice latte, it's getting cold. And I was like sweating during Halloween. It was always hot. There was no seasons. It's one season fits all. It's so unfair. It's so unfair.
Truly. Well, welcome to Kinda All Good, the very first episode. We are so excited to be launching this new podcast. Um, and for it to be October in 3 days. So many exciting things are happening. Um, where do we even begin? How do we even start?
I guess we start why we kind of called it kind of all good, right?
Yeah,
I
for
guess
sure.
so. Backstory, I always use the phrase all good at all. Like texting, if you text me, you talk to me, I say all good all the time. I think I sound like an old man, but I just do it now. I do it all the time and like I'm kind of it's a thing. And I use it interchangeably with no worries, like all good, like no problem. And
Mhm.
to be honest, it's not all good sometimes. It's really not all good sometimes. Sometimes it's really annoying. Sometimes it's kind of fucking annoying. And it's just kind of all good. Like it's not terrible, but it's just kind of all good. And I feel like life can be like that sometimes. Like when someone's like, "How are you?" You're like, "Yeah, I'm good." No, I'm kind of all good. I don't know. What does kind of all good mean to you?
I think it's kind of like that nice in between, right? Like
Mm,
when someone asks you, like, how are you? Instead of saying, like, I'm good, which is like a standard answer and doesn't really say, like, whether you're good, whether you're not good. I feel like kind of all good is like a nice in between, right? It's not like you're doing fantabulous all the time, but it's also not like
fantabulous.
you're in like a little shell somewhere.
True.
So I think it's just like, it's like a very comforting phrase. Like you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to be all the way good. You can just be kind of all good. That's okay
Absolutely.
too.
No, and that as well. Like, I was just talking to my friend about this tonight. I feel like our days now feel like weeks. Like, I go through like 12 emotions within one day. I cannot even believe it. So, by the end of the day, I'm like, whoa, like, it's kind of all good. I was like, not doing, like, even today, like, around lunchtime, I was like, I am stressed. I'm never gonna, like, I don't even know what to do. Where do I even begin? But now I'm like, I'm vibing. The morning's good. It's always my midday that I get stressed. Like, nights and mornings, I'm always
Mhm.
chill. I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, I feel that. No, I feel like there's this chart that I saw. It's kind of like astrology, but for productivity.
Ooh, oh my
So you can
goodness.
like, you're like a bear or you're a wolf or a lion or something like that. But it basically tracks like where your productivity is and like when you
Oh,
feel like most stressed during the day. And then based on that, like you're assigned to like an animal and that's like how you live your life kind of. This is all, we'll post a picture on our Instagram
oh
at
my
some
goodness.
point of this. But I think I agree. Like my afternoons are like the weirdest time, especially if I
Yeah.
didn't wake up early in the morning.
Oh yeah.
It can feel like the afternoons are either like forever or not there at all. Yeah, I would love to ask our audience as well, like, what does kind of all good mean to you? Um, I really want to dive deep a little bit into this idea of like the pressure of feeling good, like to always feel good too, which is definitely something we want to talk about on this podcast a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I guess before we get into that, what is this podcast for? Like, why did we start this? Ali, you want to take us
Yeah,
off?
absolutely. I think we started this for a couple of reasons. So, backstory, like Waylon and I, for those who don't know, our amazing dramatic love story. Waylon and I both went to middle school and high school together at an international school in Hong Kong. And we were like friends, but like we'll get into some other topic, but it was a weird environment that we were in. Long story short, we were class of 2020, which is the class of COVID, which just messed everything up even more. And yeah, going into fall 2020, we each went to our universities and we definitely lost touch and we kind of like we followed each other on Instagram and things like that. But beyond that, like really nothing. And it wasn't like we were super, super close in high school. So it was like, oh, like I lost my best friend. Like, no, it was just like, yeah, okay, I guess so. And then lo and
Mhm.
behold, like the universe, God is a woman, thank you. And in March, Waylon reached out to me and was like, hey, is there a lack of female entrepreneurship at your campus? And I was like, yeah, there's like no support. I was trying to do these things. And she's like, same here. We started the Entrepreneurs podcast, we started the Entrepreneurs Network, and all these shows. But more beautifully than that, and like this is something like I really didn't expect, especially to this degree, was like how close Waylon and I have grown since then. Like I was even telling my dad today, I'm like, we
Yeah.
call like hours every day. Like we chat, I chat with you so much. Like I'm on Zoom morning, nights with you, texting back and forth. And in between this like work or this like passion that we found through female entrepreneurship, we really realized what like kind of our core values were and like the things that really got us going. And they were really similar, and they weren't really rooted always, of course, in like some sort of like venture female started. It was more like our experiences and the feelings we feel and like how our perception is of the world. And that's really what we wanted to take with kind of all good, and this idea of like where we were coming, where we want to go. There's a lot of toxic positivity around the things that we do. We just really want to put that to shame and say that like it's okay not to be okay. And things are kind of all good and they're not always all good. And I just wish that there was someone there to tell me that you don't have to be, oh my God, it's just the best day of my life and everything's perfect, blah, 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 blah. Like, no, it's not, because I went through that phase and
Yeah.
it just makes you feel, yeah, why do you want this show?
I think I want the show for a couple of reasons. I think like the first one is when we first started. We've had so many great conversations, highs and lows with starting not only the Entrepreneurs Network, but also starting college, transitioning from high school to college, really trying to figure out who we are. Um, and I feel like we want to take you guys along on that journey. You've kind of seen our business side, you kind of seen all of the awesome female entrepreneurs we bring on to the other podcasts. Um, but rarely do we get to share a little bit about us and a little bit about our journey. So really, we just want to sit back, relax, kind of act as your big sisters on this show as well. Um, yeah, that's kind of my reason for starting this. I think it's, if anything, it's going to be a really special podcast for Ali and I just to have a conversation to take our steps away from just the Entrepreneurs Network.
Absolutely. And I think just in life in general, like I think what's been so cool about going to college is like having these deeper conversations and being as vulnerable as possible. That's definitely been a goal
Yeah.
for me this year, just being vulnerable and being raw. So I definitely want to like challenge myself in that here as well with this podcast.
No, for sure. I think we can talk about a lot of different things on this podcast.
Yeah.
We're super excited. We have some awesome topics on its way for episode 2 and 3. But this podcast, we thought we would slow it down a little bit and talk through our introductions for those who might not know who we are, and then dig a little deeper on what those mean to us. So
Absolutely,
where do we even
Weilyn.
begin?
I think I'm gonna do a couple. Can I do a little interview with you? Can I do an entrepreneurs
Oh
podcast
my
interview with you?
goodness.
A little 5 minute
Yes.
one. So Weilyn,
Maybe
first
we
of all,
should. Oh, yes.
tell me what
Go for
excites
it.
you when you wake up in the morning.
Oh my goodness. Yes. I think the most exciting thing in the morning. Ooh,
Ooh.
so many things excite me in the morning. Let me think. Um, it really depends. Ooh, I
Fair.
don't even know where to start. Oh my goodness.
You're so cute.
Like, oh my goodness. Well, okay, maybe I should talk about like this morning
Sure,
specifically.
please.
Okay. So yesterday I went to sleep at like 10:40, and
Oh,
it's like my favorite
queen.
thing to sleep early. I haven't been
Yes.
sleeping early in a while. So that excited me. So I woke up, it was like 6:30. I was like, yes, so exciting. Um, and the one thing like in the morning is I have a communal bathroom in my hallway.
Ooh.
So like when I'm the only one in the bathroom, just like, having my chill time, like not having to worry about people like walking in on me as I like brush my teeth. But honestly, just like waking up, I made myself some tea in the morning. It was like a little bit colder here in New Jersey. So like the weather kind of excited me. I don't know, just like what the day has in store. Um, yeah, I don't know. That's a really bad
Oh, I
answer.
love it. To be fair, though, it's not fair because you've heard this question so many times. So you've got like so many perspectives. It's not like you just like
I
can answer the first
know.
thing that comes to your mind. Like it's come to your mind like a million times.
Yeah. Wait, what about you? What's something that excites you in the morning?
Right now, I'm in a phase of my life. I've been in this phase for a while where like I just don't close the blinds at all, like at all.
Ooh.
So like the sun, I'm like, I look and like the weather's been so good in Shanghai the last 2 weeks, like blue skies every day. It's like Mr. Blue Sky every day. It's so nice.
I love that.
Yeah, no, it's so good. And also like the days that I am do thing, like if the day, like this doesn't happen every day, but like the days that I wake up and like I go running and like I shower right after, I'm like, I am the queen of the world. Doesn't mean that has to be like that every day. Don't want that every day, but the days that feel right for me to do that, I do feel really good about that. And so I also drink a lot of water when I wake up in the morning. Like I wake up like desert. Well, actually, no. I wake up, I need to pee immediately, but also I need to drink water. So I'm kind of at like I wake up in a crisis every day, I guess you could say. I guess that's it.
Which do you do first?
I'm gonna be honest. Sometimes it's at the same time.
I
Gotta keep it
love
real. It's
that.
called multitasking, Weilyn.
Oh my goodness. I think I need to incorporate that in my life, like waking up and like
Multitasking?
drinking lots of
Oh.
water. Uh no, oh my goodness. I don't know, like the feeling of cold water in the morning, just like
Yes.
something about that, like I don't really like. I know a lot of people like it,
No,
but
you're
like it
right.
makes me really
No,
cold inside.
no,
Like I can
Waylon,
only
you're
drink like
right.
hot water in the morning.
Waylon, you are
Um
so right. You are in the wrong continent. All of China, like no one will give you cold water. Like everything's warm water, and like it's right.
yeah.
Like because
Mhm.
your body is at like 37 degrees Celsius, and that's like the water you should be drinking because then it takes like extra energy. Like that's better for your body. Like you're not supposed to have a cold water. It like shocks your body, which is like
Oh my
I don't know.
goodness.
Like the warm water is like it's like even oh my
The
goodness,
thing
not to
is,
get into this, but
okay,
like
I'm like
mother's
a
milk,
very
it's like warm. It's like
I'm like
those
very weird with like the temperature of my water. If it's like I can
interesting.
only do extreme temperatures. Like I can only
Ooh.
do like very, very hot or like very, very cold. Like anything in between like room temperature or like lukewarm,
Oh,
like
lukewarm,
I
disgusting.
absolutely hate it. Like it's
Disgusting.
so bad.
I'm imagining
Oh,
like a Binaqual water bottle that's been like sitting out in the sun all day and you open it
yeah.
up and it literally feels like you're drinking urine. Like it's disgusting.
It
I can't do that.
no.
No, absolutely not. I'm so sorry. I just had to go there. That's kind of where
Oh
my
my
rawness
goodness.
energy is right now. Waylon, I know you kind of struggle with the question, which is like, where are you from? Because you are just this
Ooh.
Kickstarter, fantastic third culture kid. So first, my first part of the question is like kind of give your cliche answer, like where am I from? What's your background? But then with that as well, why does
Mhm.
this question confuse you? And why does it yeah, why does it confuse you?
Yeah, for sure. I think that okay. My very standard answer is that I'm from Singapore. I was born there and then I moved to the Netherlands when I was 1. And then in the Netherlands, we moved from Eindhoven to Den Haag. And then from Den Haag, we moved back to Singapore for 3.5 years. Then after that, we moved to Hong Kong for 8 years. And now I'm in New Jersey. And then in between all of that, I was brought up in the UK education system and the US education
Oh my
system.
God, yeah.
Yeah, and then on
Wow.
top of that, like my dad is he grew up in Malaysia and my mom grew up in Singapore. And although we all have Singapore passports, it really does feel sometimes like I don't resonate with one group or another. So
Mm.
definitely have a dilemma of some sorts of where I can't say I'm from the Netherlands, or maybe I can, but I don't
Can you get a
feel
passport from
connected.
there?
We almost I don't think we got a passport, but we were almost gonna be like resident citizens,
Ooh,
something like
okay.
that. But then we chose not to.
Got it.
Um, Not sure why,
Well,
but that
Singapore's a
happened.
great passport. You're J chilling. You're chilling.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, like Netherlands, like I don't speak the language. I haven't lived there since I was 6.
Mm.
Singapore, I've only lived there for 3 years, which is like the least amount of
Mm.
time, despite me having a passport from there. And then Hong Kong, I don't speak Cantonese, and I haven't grown up there long enough to really understand the culture. And so I don't really count myself as being from Hong Kong. And then I don't count myself as being from the US because I don't have a US passport and I've only lived here for a year. Um, so it's just it's just a weird mix of things
Yeah.
where it almost sometimes when people ask me like where are you from and I give them I'm from Singapore but I'm like I lived in the Netherlands, Singapore and in Hong Kong, it almost feels like I'm boasting. Like I get really uncomfortable because people are
Interesting.
like I'm from California, I'm from like Las Vegas, I'm from like Taiwan or something, and I'm like oh like
Yeah.
I'm from this place but I'm also like ties like here, and it almost feels like I'm
Interesting.
boasting that like I don't know. It's like a weird thing that I think about a lot where I'm like, I wish I could sometimes just be like, I'm from Singapore and like really feel
Yeah.
like that's my main identity. But I
That's
don't
really,
know.
why do you think it's a boasting thing? Like, do you think it's some sort of like global elitism idea that we think like if you have connections in more places? Because on one hand, like I'm thinking like this global elitism thing. Wow, I'm from so many places. But there's also like this like immigrant, this like when you think of like an immigrant, you're like, wow, it's not luxurious or not elitist to say, oh, but my parents are from here, but I'm living here. So it's interesting how you kind of
Yeah.
have both ends on that. Like on one way, you can think of it's like amazing and like it's boasting to say you're from many places. But the other hand, it's like you're not really from here situation where that's like
Yeah.
distasteful. What
I
do you
think
think
it's
about
mainly
that?
like in the college setting when people are like, oh, like, where are you from? And I'm like, and someone's like, oh, I'm from California. And it's like, oh, that's so cool. And then they ask you, like, where are you from? And you're like, oh, like, I'm from Singapore, but I'm also like like have ties in all of these other places,
Mm,
and then it makes them feel like being just from California or like
mm,
just from somewhere is like not enough, when in fact like I think it's so cool that some people have grown up and like really have strong ties back home. But I think sometimes like I get in my head with like making the situation feel like awkward, and like I don't know, it's definitely something that nobody else thinks about maybe, but like I think about it a lot, and like maybe nobody cares, but I don't know. What about you? Let's learn a little bit more about Ali DeBow. Where did it all start?
where did it all
Where were
start?
you born? And then what was the path from there?
Well, the path was that I was born in Matilda Hospital on February 12th, 2002, the first day of Chinese New
Oh,
Year.
yes.
Fun fact, year of the horse.
Ooh.
Very fun. My parents are both originally from Canada. And when I say originally, I mean they were both born there. And both their parents were born there. And they grew up honestly as diametrically as opposed as I did. Like when we like my sister and I talk about it, like they very insular community, really hung out with the same sorts of people, very, very white. Um, and they were bored. They met really, really young and they got married after they finished university. And then in 1984, they were just trying to get out. They were bored. They wanted to do something. And my mom got a job at the Canadian International School in Hong Kong. And she came out. They're like, yeah, we'll stay here for 2 years, blah, 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 blah. And then, lo and behold, 2002, Queen was born. Kidding. And then my sister was born in 2004 as well. And then I lived my entire life in Hong Kong. And by that, I mean, I lived a long term expat, quasi American, quasi Canadian, quasi Jewish life in Hong Kong. Which brings me to my question. Like you mentioned this too, about like not really seeing from Hong Kong. Like I don't speak Cantonese. I know enough for a taxi to get to my house. I know enough to go sing ha, like how to say welcome to the aircraft when you're on Cathay Pacific. And like that feels so obnoxious for me to say because you think you live in a place for 18 years. And I usually say, oh, well, it used to be a British colony, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, like if I say it's my home, I feel like you need to know the language and be able to interact with those people. And I think Singapore and Hong Kong are strange places because there's such a large expat community and a growing long-term expat community. Whereas like in some other countries in Asia or Africa and things like that, the expat community is like maybe like 2, 3 years short term, but like the quality of life in Hong Kong and Singapore and Seoul and Tokyo are really good for expats. So people are like, why am I gonna go back to like where I grew up in the suburbs in the US, wherever they may be? So they stay there. And I'm kind of a product of that. So yeah, I guess influences a ton like I'm a Hong Kong Canadian Jew. Like that's really it. And it's very niche. It's very strange. You won't find any others. You might find my sister, but that's really it. There's not many of us out there. And I think that really shaped my perspective in terms of schooling. Same with you. I went to an American school the way up. So I definitely have that beautiful American international accent. But then I think we were talking about this the other day, but like I definitely feel like an empathic. I don't even know if that's the right word. Empathic. I feel very connected to lots of cultures as well, even though I'm not from there. And
Mhm.
and that I think is the nature of just traveling in Hong Kong.
Empathetic?
Empathetic. No, there's like a word for like someone who's really empathetic or like an empathic.
Oh,
Someone will.
like
I
an
can't speak.
empath?
An empath. That's it. That's exactly it. You're totally right. So that.
That's
Um.
yeah, no, I feel that.
Yeah.
I feel like your story is so it's like it's so niche, but I hope that a lot of our listeners can also like relate to some aspect as well of like,
Mm-hmm.
especially like maybe you haven't grown up in multiple different places, or maybe you haven't like grown up in a place that's not your home, but like I think
Mm-hmm.
with like as cliche it is as it is, like with the internet and like global, like literally globalization, like I feel like the idea of like being from somewhere is becoming a lot harder of a question
Totally.
for a lot of people, right? Like to be
Yeah.
able to resonate with a lot of different things. And I think that it's fair to say like some people resonate with other parts of their identity, uh like instead of where they're from, right? Like I think that a lot
Yeah.
like
That's a
there's
really
so
good
many
point.
ways to identify yourself now, that like maybe your nationality is like not one, so and like maybe other aspects are more complex, so I
No,
think
I
that's
love
definitely
that.
something to think
No, like this
about.
idea of like
Yeah.
what is home? Like people grow up in these towns or these places in the world and they hate everyone around them. They feel ostracized. They
Mhm.
feel so different, but maybe they have an online community they connect with, like maybe through YouTube or Reddit or Instagram or whatever that may be. Like that's where they find their community. And I'm sure that's more a place they feel like home than it is like their school. So yeah, I love that idea. I think that's such a good point you bring up. Like, where is home for you, Weilyn? Like, where do you feel most at home with? And like, that doesn't have to be a place. Like, I don't know, like kind of explain to me an environment, people, food, things you're doing that feels like home. Like, what feels like Waylon's home? What's your mental home?
Ooh, mental home. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. A side note, when I was little, I used to like compartmentalize my brain. Like
Oh
I
my
thought
God.
that I could visualize like what my brain looked like.
Same.
I'm
Like
not
I
sure if
had
this
like
is the
drawers.
right,
I had like
like
drawers.
drawers. I had like
Same.
a two-story library with
Ooh.
like books that were shaped like penguins because obviously penguins like were my favorite animal and like
Oh,
each of the books
you should
held
have
like a
mentioned that.
different memory. Oh,
You should have mentioned that earlier. That should have been like the first thing you said.
I know,
That was a big
truly.
part of your life.
My
It was.
it really is.
It was.
And so I used to think that like my brain was like literally just like books of penguins. Anyway,
I
another
love
really
that.
big side note
Big,
before this,
please.
something that really helped me when I was little to like get through certain things or like to mentally compartmentalize things was I would imagine like something that would be really stressful in my life and I would imagine it as like a paper in my head and like it would be like crumpled in the middle and then I would
Ooh.
mentally push it out of like the right side of my brain and I would do it for a lot of things that would stress me out. And then I talked to a therapist about it and she was like that's actually a really like good
That's
like I'm surprised you could like
crazy.
figure that out yourself and I was like wow like I'm surprised I could figure that out
You are
myself but
literally a queen. What
yeah.
the heck? Those are
Yeah,
the mind
it
games we want to play.
truly.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
anyway, that was a
No,
big
love
side
that.
note.
That's so cool. For me, my side note, when someone mentions a name, you know those like spy movies when like there's like a most wanted person and they see someone's name and like they pull up all the information like last seen, photos, date, identity. Like when someone says their name in like a microsecond, I have like someone's identity like pulled up in my head. Like last seen, I have like an image or like an outfit I always imagine someone in, like their smell, their like the words they use, their candor, like everything like immediately micro has a, like that's one of the most like prominent parts of my brain, how I visualize things when someone says someone's name.
That's crazy. That's the level I want to be. I'm so
No.
bad with people's names. Truly, like I have a friend here, Katie. She like every time we see someone, like and we're standing next to each other, she'll like I'll recognize the person and I'll be like, "Hey." And then I have to wait for her to say the
Oh my
person's name
goodness.
so that I remember who the person is. And she'll be like, "Hey, like Sabina." And I'll be like, "Hey,
Oh
Sabina."
my goodness. No.
Oh, I'm the
I do something
worst.
worse. I shamelessly say, "Oh, sorry, how do you spell your name?"
Oh
Which
my goodness.
does not work. Like to be fair, maybe it would work like for your name, like, oh, like Weilyn, W-E, whatever. But for someone like Joe, John, like Anna, like these like Western mainstream names, which are usually the names I forget because they're so like it doesn't work. And they're just like, you forgot my name. I'm like, I did forget your name.
Oh
I've read
my
a bunch of
goodness.
like books and stuff like how you remember people's names. First, I do have a very like intense memory. Like Weilyn reminds me of like there's a way to get the paper out of your head if you're like there's some things like that.
Someone told me
Yeah.
that the best way to remember someone's name is by associating them with another person you know with the same name. So, like, if
Oh.
John is your neighbor and you meet a new John, you could be like, "Oh, John, my neighbor, but this is not my neighbor John," or something like that, and like making his stories about it. I recently picked up rowing, which is like a whole nother thing we
Yes.
can talk about.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
But
Yes.
I
Yes.
always forget whether starboard, so like the oars have like green or red on them, depending on
Okay.
whether they're starboard or port.
I don't know what
And me
that
and my
means. Sorry,
friend,
sorry for
I know,
the rowing incompetent in the room. What is a starboard?
so oh, I wish I could tell you. Starboard is like one of the sides of the boat, and then
Oh,
port is like the other. So like one
oh,
is
it's
like
like
left,
left
one
or
is
right.
right.
Oh,
Exactly.
they could have
But I
just
can't
called it
remember
that.
which one is exactly.
They could have.
But you
Okay,
know.
got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it.
Anyway, I like can't remember whether like you put the oars with the green on the like starboard side or the port side. So I
Yeah.
was telling my friend, I was like, oh, like starboard, birds. Birds, they're on green grass. Ooh,
Ooh.
green. And then now I like
Ooh.
can't forget that.
No,
But
now
now I
I
need
won't
to find
either.
one to remember. I know. I need to now remember whether starboard is left or right. My sister's gonna scream listening to this podcast. She's gonna be like, how?
It's Kaylin's birthday today. I DM'd her.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
That's
She's
so
turning
good.
21,
That's
which is
crazy and
absolutely
only
crazy.
relevant in the United States.
Yeah. Anyway, what was our original
What was
topic?
it?
We were
Something
like
about
asking
culture?
cultures. I
Maybe.
don't remember.
Who knows? We've
We took a
diverted.
large
What is
detour.
it?
It's
Yeah.
fine.
We move on. We move on. Anyways, so
Mm,
situation, I'm excited because I'm going to Beijing on Friday.
I'm so
And I
excited.
am super hyped because last time I've gone to Beijing was for like the school tournaments, like tennis and soccer before like COVID. And we would just go from like the school to like the tournament to home. But now I'm like doing all the touristy stuff that I've done a
Wait, have
couple
you
times throughout my
never?
life.
Yeah.
No, I have. I've gone like maybe like 5 times throughout my life with my family. But now it's like, it's my own thing. I'm gonna go to the Great Wall and Tiananmen Square and
I
all
love
that fun
that.
stuff.
You're such
I
an
do.
independent queen.
Oh my goodness. No, honestly. Okay. Also, everyone, I've been in China for 11 months straight. I haven't seen any of my family. That's another side note, which has been like that's a whole other journey to talk about. Doing well, but yes, that is also a journey that we've gone through. Um, on that note though, Waylon, how do you think you've changed mostly in the past like 9 months or yeah, I guess 9 months since coming to college?
Ooh, I want to throw that question back to you. Let me throw it back to you first. I
Oh
want to hear what
no.
you have to
I
say.
have to dungy dung 1 second. I gotta think. Well, first of all, I realized how much I can evolve and change, and nothing like growth mindset is everything. Like I went into NY Shanghai, I went to Shanghai, I came here. I came with a lot of strict rules of my life that I always thought like this had to be the way it is. This has to be like this is it. Like there are so many variations in life, and like that's so amazing. Like even just like my mind was so rigid like this is a bad person,
Hmm.
this is a good person, this is how this is a b, this is a bad action. It is so much more variant than that. And I think that comes a lot with like with the environment we grew up in, like this is success, this is not success, this is like what a good respectable person, this is what's not it. And to be honest, like I don't think we grew up in the most artistic creative environment relative to like what they may have shown to us. Like it was very like this is what you got to do, that sort of thing. So I've definitely become more creative and artistic since being here. A lot more go with the flow, which is like definitely not how anyone would describe me here, but definitely
100%.
me compared to 1 year, definitely yes.
You are definitely like more spontaneous, I think, than you were in high school. And
Trying
you
to plan
definitely,
spontaneity. That's
I
the
think,
that's the tagline. Plan spontaneity.
I love that so much. I think that accurately describes most of your days.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm gonna
I
plan at
feel
2
like it
p.m.
does.
2 p.m. Google Calendar. I'm gonna be spontaneous. That's literally me.
But I think more than that, like, I think that you have challenged yourself to think about like what it means to be happy. And I think like
Yeah.
you recognizing that journey for you has been something that has been awesome to watch, like to understand, like to like see yourself grow and like see yourself like be like, hey, like it's okay like for me not to be happy right now, and like challenging what it means to be happy for you and like what that means for those around you, but also like what that means for you as well. I think has been a really cool journey that I'm definitely grateful that I got to watch.
Okay, you're
um
gonna make me cry. That was kind of all good. That was kind of all cute. But like I would say the same to you as well.
yeah.
Like it's really cool to know. I almost feel like we live like two lives with each other and like we're seeing each other like in a new
Oh
life
yeah.
in many ways. Like even like knowing you and like knowing you both directly and indirectly in high school, like and you even like retelling your life to me, like it's so beautiful to see. Like I feel like you've like grown, like you were like a caterpillar
Aw.
and like you like just cocoon, you were like the most gorgeous flying butterfly in the world right now. Like you are exactly who like you wanted to be, and like to see you every single day go for those things that like you never would have done in the past, and like put yourself
Yeah.
out there and like do things that you want to do to make yourself happy and not make someone else happy. It makes me so freaking happy. Like being on your time, being on your priorities.
Yeah.
Cause like, no, like you're living your own life. Like even like take rowing, we're taking back to that. Like that's not like from people's judgment to like your own time. Like that's something that I know you want to do. And like you seeing you go through that, I was like, oh my God, like she's just living her life now. Like Waylon is living Waylon's life. And like that's the coolest thing to watch someone,
I
like to
love
watch
that.
someone who's living their happiest or like their truest life, I guess.
Thank you. I think I still, I don't know. I think I still struggle a little bit with that, like making sure that
Mhm.
my time is like my own time, but definitely
Yeah.
being like even just more aware of it, right? Like not being a slave to my Google Calendar
Oh my
anymore,
God.
not feeling like
Yeah.
I think the one thing that I still struggle a lot with was is like feeling like if I say no to something, like things will
Mm,
end and like
this is
I've
huge.
like that. Yeah, and we definitely will touch
Huge.
on that like
Yeah, like a million
later
times
on in the
over.
podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, like I think that's something I've grown a lot is definitely being a better listener. I think during this podcast,
Mm.
especially, like Allie and I have both learned how to listen better and be more attentive to what people are saying and like even more empathetic, right? And like I don't think I realized before how my experiences in the past allow me to be empathetic and allow me to understand what people are going through. And then through this podcast, I feel like I've been able to do that to a greater extent. So that's exciting. Um,
Yeah, empathy is
yeah,
huge.
I don't
Empathy is
know.
really huge. Like I was telling you before, there's like
Yeah.
because when you go to college, people come from all sorts of backgrounds, different stories, different perspectives. And like
Hmm.
sometimes you're like, I have no idea what you're going through. That is so different. And I really struggled with that at first because I was like, I can't relate to you. Like, I'm sorry. Like and that's really isolating. So I've really tried to work on that. Yeah, how have you kind of dealt with that with like being with people from completely different backgrounds and they tell you a story, they tell you something, you're like, I have no personal experience with this at all. Like, how do you kind of like talk to them about it or like comfort them if it's something good or be proud of them if it's something like you don't really if it's something like good? Like, I
Yeah.
don't know. How do you deal with that?
I think something I always do before I engage is I ask them how they want me to engage.
Ooh.
So, like, if someone's like, I'm really, really sad, and they tell me what's wrong, I always ask, or I try to ask, like, okay, like, how can I be most helpful as a friend to you? Like, can I give advice? Can I, like, do you just want someone to hear you out, or do you want someone to like support you and do something on your behalf? And I think by like asking those questions, you're able not to like impose what you think is right and be able to like really try to be there for them. So like oftentimes I have friends, I think like before I came to this realization, like I would just always give my advice. I'd be like, okay, like problem,
Mm,
solution, problem, solution, problem, solution, problem, solution. But I realized like people don't always want to hear your advice, right? Like people don't want that. And like people may not even want to have a solution, right? Like I have so many friends who like rather me just like listen to them and like hear them out and then do absolutely nothing about it and just say like I'm here for you, right? What about you? Like where do you find that balance when someone comes to you with like a really hard problem?
yeah, I think you make a great point that like listening is so much more powerful than you might think. Like sometimes just being there and sitting in silence is like the best thing. So like adding on to what you're saying, like how can I support you? I kind of go with the realm with like, do you want me to give it? Do you want advice? Do you want support? Or do you want both? Like that's really where it is. Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you just want someone to listen. Like take my therapy, for example. I speak 90% of the time and like I feel amazing after.
Yeah. I think also another thing that really helped me was like sometimes people need to hear what they're saying and like
Oh,
back
like
to them.
right
So
back.
like sometimes
Yeah.
I'll be like, "Oh, like is this what you mean?" And they'll be like, No, this is what I mean." I'll be like, "Oh, so like this is what's hurting you." And they're like, No, this is it." I'm like, "Oh, okay.
Mm,
So this and this and this." And they're like, "Wait, yeah, like that's what's hurting me." Because like I think it's sometimes
interesting.
really hard to be in the situation where you're like I feel overwhelmed, like these relationships are not going well, this and this and this and this and
Sure.
this. And then it's like, okay, like what is the actual, like what is hurting you the most right now? And like being
Yeah.
able to be like, I hear you about this. Like, do you think it's this or this? And then they can like kind of work through it. I think helps me a lot when my friends do it for me. Um, and then also helps them a lot too. So that's also another thing we're definitely
No,
hoping
yeah.
to touch on in this podcast as
I've
well.
been
But
thinking about, yeah, like
yeah.
what hurts you the most? I've been thinking about that the other like something I realized that's hurt me. And like this is something that goes back to like primary school when I was young. I hate being excluded from things. Like whenever
Hmm.
there's an event, I always say like, of course come, of course come. Oh, can this person come? I always say yes. And I think that really ties a lot within rejection. Like you're not being included into something. That's what rejection feels like. Like I've noticed threesomes, like I mean, like with like friend groups, like when you're being like young, threesomes, friend group, oh, there's only six seats, seven things. Like I've always felt like I was excluded, like excluded from like social things. And like
Hmm.
that really ties into like fear of the rejection, that sort of thing. Like I was doing my psychoanalyze about myself, my daily psychoanalyze. Do you feel that? Or is that just me and my
Yeah,
own
no, I
panic?
feel like that's so true. Like, especially like be like having the constant fear of like not being invited or not like being excluded from things, especially when you put so much effort into those around you to like sometimes not see those and go into like full fruition can definitely like hurt you a lot. And I definitely
Mhm.
resonate a lot with that. Um, Yeah, no, we can definitely. I just want to give you a big hug.
I want to give you a hug too. Waylon and I have not met since we started this whole journey, which is also a whole other like craziness. How does this come to be? Yeah, I think it also ties a lot in, and this is something we've talked about before, like not having friends appreciate you if you like do something. Just in general, having friends appreciate you, like showing gratitude, but particularly when there's like something they're like even saying like thank you or things like that, and like it's not a big deal, just showing like I acknowledge and I appreciate your gesture, your care, your love, whatever it may be. um so yeah, like I that's something that I've always felt too. Like I felt like it has to do with communication as well. I recommend everyone here to take the 5 love language quiz so they can know what their love language is and they can understand how to friends, relationships, family members, whatever they may be, understand your love language. My number one is definitely quality time. What is yours, Waylon?
Ooh,
Have you
I
taken it?
think mine is, yes, I
It's
have.
amazing.
Mine
Amazing.
is words of
Words of
affirmation, I want to say,
affirmation. You are right, Waylon.
which
It is. Okay.
truly, yeah, I don't know. What are like love languages are oh my goodness.
No,
Let me
it's so
restart that.
important because it's like, how do you communicate well with someone? You're like, if someone feels uncomfortable with a hug and like they don't like physical affection, like giving them a hug like is distasteful for them. Even if you like it, like
Yeah.
if they are not going to receive love that way, don't give them a hug.
hmm I think like if only everyone knew what each other's love
We
languages were,
should. I
like
love that.
communication, everything would be so much better. Business idea.
Yes. Wait, honestly, just like having everyone like your band. My love language is blank.
Yeah, like when you introduce yourself, like, oh, like, hey, I'm
Yeah.
Weilyn, like my pronouns are she and her, and like the way I receive love is this.
I
Can we
love
normalize
I can
that?
we normalize that? Can I put that as like, on Zoom calls you have to put like your name, your pronouns, could be like love language.
Yeah.
That's so good. What are your top okay, I think that ties in well with like communication in general. Like what's your number one tip for communication? Like just in general with like
Ooh,
relationships, with business, with family, like what is your number one thing for relationship for communication?
ooh, that's such a good one. Um, ooh, there's so many. I think right now with a lot of my relationships, it's like knowing that space is okay sometimes, and
Ooh.
like knowing that like, like okay, with some of the like friendships, like it's okay if like people come and go, and that's okay, like that's a form of space. If you're in like the middle of an argument, like to take space away and like be able to form your thoughts is really important. And then like with friendships too, like especially in college when you're like trying to make as many friends as possible and like really exploring different friendships, like knowing that space doesn't hurt. Like if you're not spending time with like someone every single day of every single hour, like that's okay, and like you guys can still be friends. I don't know. What about you?
No, that's
What
so
would you say is
important
like,
because I'm definitely someone who like overthinks and wants to like triple, quadruple, quintuple text. That's a really good one. Another one for me is kind of the opposite in some ways, is
oh,
that if there's a conflict and you two, the worst thing is to forever and always stop talking. Like
oh yes.
always have a conversation. Like if you're fighting between the two of you, the worst thing is just like, okay, I've never like space 100%. Like space is needed. You need a break. But the idea that this is done and like I'm gonna be mad at you forever is so painful. Like we
Mm-hmm.
need forgiveness. We need to keep the conversation going. Like this is I can take my family for example alone. Like we can fight. Oh my God, do we fight? But at the end of the day, like it's talking it out, saying, hey, this is what's up. This is not okay. This is how I feel, blah, 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 blah. And the moment like you hear you hear about these stories like, oh, their strange brother, we don't talk to them anymore. Like I think that's the saddest thing. Like we just don't talk to them anymore, especially when it was
Mm-hmm.
someone who's so close in your life at a point to just cut off communications. It's like abandonment. It's terrible.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think like there's so much there to unpack as well,
Yeah.
like in terms of relationships and being able to like not only like know when someone is not right for you in life, but also be able to be like willing to fight for relationships that matter.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely like a
But like when
balance
is
to it.
enough enough? That's where I deal with that's where I struggle with. Like
Yeah,
you can I
no,
think
for
it's important
sure.
to fight, but like how much can something take out of you before it's like I need to let this go at least for now. It's
Yeah,
difficult. It's so difficult.
no, for
Especially to look
sure.
inside yourself because like you always have friends who are like, no, this is good, this is not good. But like you always know in your heart what's right to do. Like, trust your gut. You know what you got to do. Like, you and your
Mhm.
heart in general for every decision in your life. Like, we always like ask friends, that sort of thing, but like, trust your gut. Like, you're living your own life. Like, you are the pilot. You are the commander in chief. You are the CEO. You are the
You know what?
CEO. You are the founder of your life.
I love that. I also know that it's so hard to do that
No,
sometimes.
it's
Like,
so hard.
I'm thinking about certain aspects of my life, and I'm like, yes, my gut is telling me this. My mind is telling me this. My friends are telling me this. My family's telling me this. What the hell do I do?
But
Like one of
and
those
they're all completely different.
situations. And they're all like completely different.
Oh my
And
god.
like trusting your gut can be such a
Yeah.
weird thing as well. Oh my
Because like it's like the
goodness.
only person you can blame is yourself. It's like, and
Exactly.
that's
Oh,
like, yeah.
yeah.
But then if something goes well, the only person you can reward is yourself.
I
Yay.
know it's definitely a double-edged sword. Well,
Oh.
I'm just thinking, how can we swivel this discussion to end on a happy and laughable note?
How do we think? But that's the whole
I
idea
don't
as well.
think we
Like, think
have
about that.
to.
We don't have to.
Exactly.
Exactly. Like, why does everything have to end? Like, okay, well, blah, 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 well, thank you so much, and we'll come like subscribe. Like, no, like, this is how life is. I feel like half of my thoughts, most of my thoughts are me kind of in between, kind of thinking about like all the happiest things in my life. I'm like, my God, my life is perfect, but also like, oh my God, this is so tragic. This is so terrible. And then like I'm kind of always in between and hopscotching back and forth. And I feel like that's what our conversation was. Like, we're both very gracious, grateful people, but we also do acknowledge and talk about the nuances and the rhetoric. And I think that's quite cool to show. And that's really what kind of all good's about. It's about saying like, yeah, things are great and like we like that, but it's also okay to point out and critically evaluate the things that are not great.
No, for sure. And with that, it's our first episode of Kinda All Good.
Amazing. Thank you
Um,
guys for listening.
yeah, and if you want to check us out, be sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. And then to follow the Entrepreneurs Network and then updates on Kinda All Good, make sure to follow our Instagram and LinkedIn.
Amazing. Everything will be linked below as well. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, but not too wonderful, just a kind of wonderful day. Okay. Bye, guys.
See you.